Hello. Um, when we're talking about professions, that is various types of jobs, I always try hard not to generalize people. I try hard not to sort of tar everyone with the same brush because they happen to be doing the same sort of job or within the same industry. Now, I've attacked politicians, I've attacked bankers, and maybe at times, in the midst of my anger, I have made generalizations. I'm sure there's been times I've come out with that lying, greedy bankers. That's not entirely fair because not every banker is going to be unethical and so on. Anyway, this video is about soldiers, military people. I'm not just talking about soldiers, I'm also talking about sailors and those in the Air Force. Um, I think this is important to weigh in on really because within the last few years, with Britain being involved in several foreign campaigns, Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on, the subject of our military has been pretty prominent. Um, I want to be careful how I word this because this is a subject that does bring about strong reactions. Firstly, I genuinely respect the majority of soldiers, and let me explain why. These people, mostly men, some women as well, put their lives on the line literally. They're in an incredibly tough job that most of us can't comprehend. And I think job doesn't even sum up what they're facing on a day-to-day basis. In many cases, I've seen colleagues blown up and things that most of us civilians can't imagine. Um, so I do want to be sensitive to that, and I have my profound admiration for that real courage that they do show. Um, there's absolutely no question about it. It takes courage to knowingly join up, knowing there's a chance you could be killed. To go to a war zone, whatever way you look at it, that is brave. So saying soldiers is brave is accurate in that sense. There's another phrase, soldiers are heroes. I think this is a term that gets thrown around a lot. I think some soldiers certainly are. There's no question about that. The soldier who risks his own life to save a group of Afghan civilians by taking on a Taliban fighter head on, he was a hero. A soldier who threw himself over a mine in order to protect his colleagues, he was a hero. And in my opinion, every soldier on the front line is brave. However, what I'd like to say in this video is that there's a tendency to dehumanize soldiers by both sides. But I say both sides, there's been campaigns going around on Facebook saying soldiers are not heroes. These have obviously attracted a lot of controversy and a lot of anger from the other side. They're in the minority because the majority is those who like to talk about how soldiers are heroes. I see two extremes here. On one hand, you have extreme pacifists, and this isn't referring to all pacifists, but there are extreme pacifists who want to accuse all soldiers of being baby killers, who want to accuse all soldiers of being mindless imperialists, who want to accuse all soldiers of being trigger-happy thugs, etc. That's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's wrong to judge these people when you haven't been in their shoes. You haven't been out in the front line. They're not all baby killers. The majority of them aren't, in fact. I think you'll find that the civilians being murdered, most of them are being murdered by insurgent attacks. So get your facts right. And also to those people saying soldiers are not heroes, maybe you don't think they're heroes, but don't take away the bravery. Because even if you don't agree ideologically with what they're doing, the fact of the matter is they're putting their lives at risk. Now, I do agree with the dispute that they're fighting for our freedom. That's debatable. But don't take away their courage because they're brave people. There's no question about that. Um, And I think they're wrong to generalise all soldiers. However, I stand by the right to do it. You can't claim that soldiers are fighting for freedom and then take away freedom of expression from others. That's just hypocritical. So those people saying, "Oh, we have to take down these groups, or we'll silence them, or they should go to jail," or and I've heard much worse than that. I've heard they should be killed, etc. And some really disgusting comments. You're proving yourselves to be utter hypocrites, because if you claim that soldiers are fighting for freedom, then you can't take away the very freedom of expression you claim to be fighting for. That's just rank hypocrisy. And now I'd like to address the other side, and that's the people I call military blowhards. In my opinion, these people are nationalistic thugs, nothing more. And there's a lot of them, and they're very vocal. And it's very hard to speak up against them because they'll accuse you of being a traitor, they'll accuse you of being a coward, they'll accuse you of being all sorts of things. I have contempt for these people. And I'm not talking about soldiers, I'm not talking about people who support soldiers, I'm talking about the really hardcore military blowhards. Those people, whether they be soldier or civilian, who take this notion that wearing a uniform gives a soldier a right to do anything they want, and who it somehow puts them above criticism. For the record, nobody, and I mean nobody, is above criticism. I'm not above criticism. People watching this are not above criticism. Soldiers are not above criticism. And let's just be brutally honest here. There are examples. This is not the status quo, but there are examples of soldiers behaving in a despicable manner. And I'm not just talking about on the front line. I'm talking about generally yobbish behaviour here at home and in other parts of the world. There was a group of British soldiers in Iceland, which is hardly a war zone, and they trashed up a local bar. Now, to be fair, their superiors forced them to tidy it up and apologise to the landlord and so on. But that's an example of how this notion that people, just because someone's in a uniform, is somehow above criticism, I think it's a very dangerous, stupid, brainwashed sort of idea. And it really, anyone who challenges that sort of behaviour is just speaking the truth. Anyone. No politician would dare criticise soldiers because they would fear a nationalist backlash, and that's unfortunate because someone needs to stand up to those type of people. I'm not talking about all soldiers. And again, in professional armies, this behaviour isn't tolerated, to be fair. There is a hierarchy, and in most circumstances that sort of behaviour is not tolerated. Soldiers doing that will find themselves disciplined and facing court-martial and so on, and rightly so. I firmly believe that soldiers guilty of criminal behaviour should be treated like everyone else. And quite frankly, in military towns, barrack towns so to speak, there are problems with young soldiers getting pissed and acting like yobs and thinking they could do as they please. And there needs to be the same sort of zero tolerance approach to that as there would be with any other type of person who causes who acts like a yob. But basically in this video I'm just fed up of the sort of blowhard approaches both ways. On one hand, you get people vilifying soldiers as ruthless killers, as brainwashed thugs, as this and that, as imperialist pawns, but they're ignoring the fact that most soldiers are normal guys just doing a difficult job in difficult circumstances. They're not bad people. They're normal people in most circumstances. On the other hand, you have the military blowhard thugs. That is those people who, I'll give an example of this. A few years ago, there was an idiot who decided to urinate on a war memorial. Now, no one disputes that was a very, very tasteless act. It was very stupid. But what I found a lot more tasteless and a lot more unsettling was the response that followed. Let me just put this in context. This young student had been on a night out, he got very drunk, and he relieved himself on a war memorial. Now, he must have been so drunk that he didn't realise what he was doing, and that's no excuse, he shouldn't have done it. But what followed was a tirade of vitriolic, sadistic comments. There was actually one group whereby people were voting on the way in which he should be tortured for doing this. They were suggesting that his mother be raped. They were suggesting he be hanged from the nearest lamppost. And that just was repulsive. I mean, it's again rank hypocrisy, because they were talking about this guy was disrespecting young men who had been killed for the country, but now they're suggesting another young life be taken unnecessarily. It's just initially my initial reaction to that was, oh, this guy's an idiot, shame on him. But then my sympathies went in his direction. I thought what he done was wrong, but he doesn't deserve this sort of. People were suggesting he went to jail. No, I don't think that heralded jail. I think he should have done community service or something. And I think the group responsible for that student tour for promoting the binging should also face some sort of consequences. But no, that didn't herald jail. I do believe those people who were making violent threats against him should have been facing charges. And, you know, that there's nothing brave about threatening to hang a 19-year-old lad because he'd done something stupid. And that's what I'm talking about by these military blowhards, these nationalistic thugs. And a lot of them have absolute racist tendencies, there's no question about that. You know, they don't give a shit about the Afghan or Iraqi civilians. There's no question about it. They have a nationalistic racist mentality. And I'm not talking about everyone. I'm not talking about military families here who are concerned for their loved ones. I'm just talking about nationalistic, brainwashed thugs who... it does bug me because these people are very vocal and very self-satisfied, and in short, I just like to say, you know, soldiers are human beings. Stop putting them on this pedestal where they're either superheroes who can do no wrong, or you're vilifying them as ruthless killers. The truth is, the majority of soldiers are normal guys who are just trying to get on with a tough job and tough circumstances. And okay, if you're ideologically opposed to certain campaigns, that's one thing. But in most circumstances, those soldiers in the front line are not harming civilians. It's the Taliban who are harming civilians, and the facts will show that. There are isolated incidents, like we know about Sergeant Robert Bales, the American Marine who killed 16 Afghan civilians. But those sort of incidents are actually quite rare, and when they happen, there are repercussions. I mean, the prosecution in the United States are actually seeking the death penalty for Sergeant Bales. That's his own side. So if you think that soldiers can get away with things, that's not true, because the army, professional armies, take this very seriously. You can guarantee the Taliban are never going to discipline their people for abusing civilians. They openly encourage it. So there's a huge difference there, and it's important to acknowledge that difference. I'd like to conclude this video by saying I really do respect most soldiers. In many circumstances, they are working under extremely hard conditions that most of us can't imagine, and I'm not going to patronize them and say I know what it's like, because I don't. But on the same card, soldiers are not above criticism, and I'm sick to death of military blowhards implying that they are. You know, just because someone wears a uniform doesn't mean that gives them a right to do whatever they want. And when a soldier abuses his or her authority, they should face the heat. You know, in the end of the day, they chose to join up. No one forced them to. So don't say that, you know, and that's why I don't go along with the excuses like, you know, when abuse occurs at the hands of soldiers, I don't go along with this idea, oh, well, it's not their fault, blame the government. I disagree with that. They have made the choice to commit that abuse. It's not number 10 ordering them to do that. They've made the choice to do it. So there's no excuses. But don't generalize soldiers. You know, most soldiers are just normal guys trying to get on with a job. and the vast majority of them don't behave like that, so we shouldn't generalize. And that's my conclusion with this video, really. Soldiers are human. They're not superhuman, and they're not demons. They're normal guys trying to get on with tough work. Okay, cheers.